just gonna pull up these questions real quick. So I guess just a basic question, what is Rakija?
Rakija, if you're in the Balkan area, which means anywhere from Turkey all the way to Vienna, Rakija is like a part of life, the way soccer is to Brazil. It's a spirit distilled from fruit, usually whatever you have on your farm that keeps the fruit from going to waste. But what makes it distinctive from other eau de vie is the fact of how old it is. It's at least 1,000 years old. It comes from the Mesopotamia, when distilled spirits came from that part of the world and made its way into Europe. So it predates French brandy by about 300 years. And it's just an ancient spirit. About 2 months ago, UNESCO recognized it as a World Heritage, World Cultural Heritage to be preserved by humanity. So it's a really missing link in the history of distilled spirits, and it's something that's not very well known in the States. That I'm introducing.
And so yeah, like what's the story of the company? What kind of interested you in bringing this?
The company, I'm a musician. I played in a band called Faith No More, and we toured Eastern Europe very early on in the early '90s when that part of the world was opening up to gigs. So we went in there, and to me, those are my favorite shows because this was like governments were in transition, everything was wild, and the deeper and more I wanted to see, the more I learned about like this Rakija that everybody had, that everybody's family made, and I started getting introduced to this really amazing family versions that you couldn't buy in a store, and I just connected with that space and time and that place with this taste, and I got home. For the past 25 years, I've been jonesing for this stuff. I've gone to the Balkans at least once a year since then, and what I do is I buy Rakija to bring home. Or if somebody I knew from the Balkans is coming to visit, I told them to bring a Rakija. But that's the only way I could get the stuff that I connected with. And it wasn't until about 3 years ago that I decided, nobody's bringing it here and nobody knows what it is. And I'm talking about people that should know, people who are consultants in the beverage industry that didn't know what Rakija was. And I'm just thinking like, this is really like a shame and nobody's doing it, and I guess I gotta have to do it. I'm gonna try it. So it was kind of a crazy idea, but at the same time, I just couldn't watch this happening of this part of the world, and this such an iconic thing being ignored. And so this is what I decided to do with myself.
And so what about Rakija stood out to you when you first tried it? That you became so in love?
Well, when I first tried Rakija, it wasn't really very good, but it was different. I could taste the fruit, but when I had a real Rakija, there was something about it. It wasn't this one, it was an aged one I had, closer to our Perva. And I was just like, it has this kind of caramely, very warm comfort to it, like a steak, And I was just thinking, and I was sitting there and I was in Belgrade and I was like, this is Rakija. And that's the thing, something clicked in my mind, and that was it. That was my drink ever since.
What's the proper way to drink Rakija?
Well, I mean, the traditional way to drink, which is how they've always drink, the peasants have always had it, is neat. Brandy type glass where you can get some nose. And that's how I like to drink it. I drink it straight and I drink it neat. However, people are mixing. Some people say that's blasphemy. I could go either way. I mean, as far as Americans are concerned, whatever it takes for them to connect to this taste is fine. But really, don't be afraid to try it neat. And, if it takes having a beer chaser with it, that's fine too. Serbians do that. Nothing wrong with it at all.
The packaging is really interesting. What's the story behind that?
Packaging is kind of multi-layered message here. This is when people died in the villages in the Balkan area. You'll see one of these obituaries posted on trees or on the bus stops, and basically to show you somebody in the village that died. I first went there with a punk band, and I was seeing these all over the place going, man, these are like gig flyers. And people couldn't understand why I was so fixated with them, and I was thinking, if I ever do a Rakija, this is going to be the label. The woman on there, she made Rakija natural style. She was kind of one of these real stick to the roots purists that only made Rakija from her village, from her trees in the natural way. She died a couple years ago, and this is kind of a tribute to her in a way. But at the same time, the name Yebiga means "fuck it" in Serbian language. So it's also a kind of a black humor, kind of defiant way of like, celebrating life through death, and kind of mocking it in a way, and also kind of like, kind of realizing that every day could be like your last day, and this is something real, like the way death is real, and should be meaningful.
What's the Yebiga process? Like, how is this Rakija made?
How is Rakija made? Well, this Yebiga process is really special, even by Serbian standards, because of the family that makes this is so meticulous in their process. There's zero cheating in it. So, normally speaking, when you have a plum tree where the plums are ripe, you pick the tree, you ferment the plums. These guys don't do it like that. They only pick the ripe plums because trees don't ripen, the plums don't ripen on the tree at the same time. So they'll hit the same tree 7 or 8 times. Nobody does things like that because it just takes too much time to do, but this is how they do it. The only ingredients used in Yebiga are plums and water. It's because these plums are picked the day that they're ripe. They don't need any additives. They don't need any sugar. They ferment properly. 13 days to 15 days in the barrel, just mashing. The pits are removed, and then they're distilled. It's double distilled, and either stored in stainless steel like this one for about 6 months just to calm down, or put into oak barrels. That's generally Serbian oak, which is French oak, but that comes from the mountains of Serbia. So the threads are a little denser, the grains are a little denser. It's a little different in how it works with plums than a French oak would, but they've been doing this for generations. They know how it works.
That's interesting.
Everything's hand bottled, hand labeled, everything done by hand, old school way, on a small farm, on a dirt road with no address. This is about as real as it gets. There's a lot of stories, I hear in this business, with whiskeys and all these legends and myths, and I don't know how many of them are true, but I can tell you that this one is 100% true.
Your music career is kind of like, and going to these countries in Serbia is kind of what introduced you to this. Is there anything else from your musical history that kind of influenced the brand?
Well, as a musician, I became obsessed with the area because, first of all, they're huge music fans out there. Second of all, actually, the music from this area I find really inspiring. I like it. The rhythms are not 4/4 rhythms. They're different than that. People grow up with that. It's very natural for them. To me, it was a whole different way of thinking about music. So musically speaking, it completely connected. It opened up a whole new way of learning and looking at music. Now that I'm saying this, if you listen to Faith No More music, you might hear some of these influences in our music. But definitely made an impression on me. And that between the spirit and the food, which is heavy and simple, but just solid. It all works together. It's kind of like what I can compare to if anybody's been to Brazil. Brazil, another place. I kind of feel like Serbia is the Brazil of Europe. To have like feijoada or churrasco and cachaça, listening to Brazilian music, it all fits together. It's the same thing with Rakija and Croatian or Serbian or Bosnian culture.
So where are your distilleries located?
Our distillery is up on a mountain. If you go to Serbia, in the middle of Serbia, there's an area called Šumadija. Šumadija is the spot where the plums are grown. They call it the real Serbia. It's kind of like the Tennessee of Serbia, where these are the guys that cook the plum stuff solid. This is up on a mountain outside of a town called Kraljevo. It's about a 30-minute drive up the mountain, just on a dirt road. I couldn't tell you where it was. I have a hard time finding it on Google Maps. But it's a little barn. It's a wood-fired still. They cut the wood right there, right outside the farm, and everything's done by hand the way they've been doing it for God knows how long, hundreds of years.
That's cool.
Yeah, completely traditional.
Is this your first time in New Orleans? Have you used it before?
This is my first time in New Orleans. The first time I was in New Orleans was 1984 when Faith No More did its first U.S. tour, and we had about a week off with no gigs, so we stayed here for about a week, and we hooked up with this family that took us around and had an amazing time. I played here with Faith No More probably about 4 or 5 times since then. but that was the real one that made the impression that really made me connect with this place. I love it here, actually.
Yeah. Do you have any favorite like bars, restaurants, spots in the city?
You know, the place I really like here is the R Bar. I just like the vibe there. It's like my kind of place. I think if I lived here, that would be my local.
Yeah.
I like the area. Yeah.
Have you been to Snake and Jake's? Any of those like other fun dive places?
I have not. There's a lot of places I haven't been.
That's one that
I'm trying to get. So my wife. Here's an interesting. My wife's family's from here. On her father's side, her great grandfather started the Musicians Union in New Orleans.
Oh wow.
Back around 1905 or something like that. I don't know how. So I could be wrong on the dates, but a long freaking time ago. So her grandmother grew up right around in this neighborhood. After this, I finished this, I'm actually going to go around in a taxi and take pictures of the house where her grandmother grew up in.
That's fun.
So I want to bring her out here actually and spend some time and hang out a little bit.